My mom chose my toxic stepsister over me and kicked me out. But years later, I'm engaged, and my fiancé's company dropped her husband's contract. Now she's blaming me. Let me explain. I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I've been engaged to my fiancé, Jeff, 26M, for about 2 months. We met through a dating app 4 years ago and have been inseparable ever since. Jeff and I are soulmates. He is the only person in my life who has never let me down. I haven't had an easy life. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old. My dad walked out on us and never looked back. He paid child support, but that was about it. He never bothered to actually see me or find out how I was doing. My mom, 48F, wasn't a great mother, to be honest. When I was younger, she was more involved in other activities than in actually raising me. I was practically raised by nannies or babysitters. My mother was really young when she had me, and her priorities were different. She didn't care much for being a mother and mostly spent her time going out with friends or on dates. She was a social butterfly and didn't have time for me. Even career-wise, she wasn't very serious about her job. She was a freelance artist, and while she made decent money every month, she didn't have to worry about me because she had child support payments coming in. I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure that if it hadn't been for the child support money, she would have kicked me out a long time ago. She was never particularly attached to me, and I mostly felt like she was waiting for me to grow up so I could leave her alone. Then, when I was around 13 years old, she started seeing my stepfather, Matt, 50M. He had a daughter my age, my stepsister, Jess. When they first started dating and my mother brought his family home for the first time, she told me to be on my best behavior. She said that this was really important to her. Now, she had brought home boyfriends thousands of times before that, but she had never cared about how I behaved. She would usually just inform me that she had guests coming over, and I would take it as a signal to go to my room and stay there until they left. But this time, I felt like she was serious about Matt because, otherwise, she wouldn't have cared about my behavior. Let me phrase it better. She wouldn't have even cared about my existence in the house had she not been serious about him. The first time I met Matt and Jess, they were relatively nice to me, and it was a pleasant first meeting. I had no idea what was about to hit me. Soon after, Matt started coming over more frequently, and after a certain point, it was like they had practically moved in together. I didn't mind. It wasn't like it was disturbing me in any way, so I had no reason to care about them, as long as they just let me get on with my life. It was that way for a long time. They were practically living together, and occasionally Jess would come over as well. Her mother was still a part of her life, so she would spend half of the month at her mom's place. Initially, they were either decent to me or they would just ignore me. Honestly, I was okay with it because I didn't particularly care for any of them. I didn't even care about my mother, so it was really difficult for me to care about people associated with her. All I wanted was my peace and quiet, and for a while I had that. But then they decided to make it a permanent thing and actually move in together. Now, I wouldn't even have cared about that, but my mom told me that now that they were moving in together, I had to start sharing my room with my stepsister. I put my foot down. I told her that I was not going to do that because it was my room. It had been my room all my life, and that was the only thing that brought me peace in that house, that I had a corner all to myself. I wasn't going to compromise my freedom by sharing my room with someone I barely even knew. When I told my mother that I was not going to share my room, we had a massive argument about it, and she told me that she would kick me out of the house if I didn't do as she said. I was 14 at the time, and I might have been young, but I still knew the law. I felt like I had to because my mother was the kind of person you really couldn't trust. Besides, it's just common sense. I knew that she couldn't actually kick me out until I was an adult, or she could get in trouble with the law, so I told her that I knew she couldn't do it and she was bluffing. She was frustrated, but she had to let me have my room. Instead, she decided to turn the basement into a room for Jess. It wasn't exactly a bad place to have a room. It just wasn't as nice as my room. But my mom made a real effort to beautify it and make it inhabitable. By the time she was done with it, it looked just as nice as any other room in the house, so I didn't even know what the big deal was. But for some reason, that's around the time that Jess started hating me. It might have had something to do with the fact that the day she moved in with us, my mom gave them the house tour and made it a point to announce to everyone that Jess had to live in the basement because I was not ready to share my room. I didn't understand why she would announce something like that. To this date, I can't think of the reason why she would do it. Maybe she wanted me to feel guilty about it by announcing it in front of Jess. But all it did was make me feel kind of weird and uncomfortable. It made me feel embarrassed for her. But I didn't feel sorry for putting my foot down. Or maybe she just thrived on drama and wanted Jess to know that I had refused to share my room with her, which would inevitably lead to problems between us because Jess didn't seem like the kind of girl who would let something like this go. My mom was right about that. Jess didn't let it go. And after that day, she started treating me like the enemy. She would still spend half of the month with her mother. But the days that she would be living with us were nothing short of awful for me. She was a menace to society, and she really had it in for me. She would be mean to me constantly and make horrible remarks about me right to my face. Just to give you guys an idea of the kind of things that she would tell me, she once said that the reason my dad had left my mother was probably because of me, and then she laughed about it like it was hilarious. She would make digs at my appearance since I was slightly chubby at the time. She would also make fun of me for no reason at school. Jess had a whole clique of mean girls at school, and she would never pass up an opportunity to bully me with her cronies. Earlier, she and her friends would usually just ignore me, and I preferred that. She and I were never going to be friends, but that was far better than being her enemy. The saddest part was that I hadn't even done anything to her. She was just offended that I didn't want to share my room with her. It was such a silly reason to hate me so much and try to make my life a nightmare. My room was my safe space, and with a mother like mine, I think nobody can blame me for wanting to have some space of my own. Besides, if any of them had ever put in any effort into actually getting to know me, I might have shared my room with her. But she was a stranger to me, and I didn't feel comfortable giving up my freedom for her. I never complained about it to my mother or Matt because they knew about it, and it was pointless to say anything to them. They didn't care about it. I could get bullied all my life, and they would still turn a blind eye to it because I wasn't important to them. So I just had to put up with it and let her walk all over me. I would fight back occasionally, but I soon learned that all that it did was escalate the argument, and our parents would get involved, and I would end up getting grounded because, of course, they hated me. She would always just cry a little and get out of trouble, but I couldn't cry on command like her, and I certainly wasn't that manipulative, so I would be the one who got reprimanded for my bad behavior, and was told that I needed to start treating Jess like my sister while she got off scot-free, and I had to face the music. It was a horrible place to grow up in, and I hated my life. So when, around my 18th birthday, I finally got kicked out, I was actually more relieved than anything. I had put up with my family's insanity for years before I got kicked out, and it only got worse with time. Jess continued to be a nightmare to deal with, and our parents continued to support her without ever questioning the validity of whatever she was doing. In the course of 4 years, she had managed to turn our entire year in high school against me, and I barely had a couple of friends who would even talk to me. Everybody else hated me because she did, and that was enough of a reason. It had taken a toll on my mental health, and I was struggling to keep up in every aspect. I had gained a lot of weight because I was binge eating like crazy, and that had drastically altered my appearance, for the worse. I was fat, struggling with acne, and my hair was also really bad. I was also struggling to keep up my grades, so not only did I look bad, but I also seemed to be dumb to everybody else. I literally had nothing going on for me, and I was at an all-time low. Things at home were no better either, because I still had to deal with Jess and my parents. My mother had become increasingly insufferable, and would constantly compare me to Jess in spite of knowing that she was the one who had made my life so much worse than it was before. Things were bad before my mom got married to Matt and they moved in together, but they weren't this bad. Yeah, it was kind of upsetting that my mother didn't care about me before, but after her marriage to Matt, I went from the frying pan into the fire. She went from not caring to actively making me feel bad about myself, and it felt like I was living with mean girls at home as well. It couldn't be more obvious to me that Jess was the daughter that my mother had actually wanted. But instead, life had dealt her the wrong cards, and she got stuck with me. I know that both of them wanted nothing more than for me to be gone, and honestly, I wanted the same thing as well. My mother and Jess hated me, and Matt didn't care. I had no family to speak of, other than my mother, since my grandparents were not in touch with us. I had never known my father, and so I didn't know about my other set of grandparents either. I literally had nowhere to go, and I felt weird asking my friends for help, so I just had to tough it out and stay with my mom so that I would at least have a roof over my head and food to eat every day, at least until I turned 18. But then, a couple of weeks before my birthday, an incident took place, and I was kicked out that very day. It was a weekend, and I still remember it as if it happened yesterday because it was one of the most traumatic and stressful days of my life. Around that time, we had both just graduated, and Jess had started hanging out with a larger group of people. She had a friend whose brother was in his last year of college, and she was dating her brother, so she and her friend would hang out with his friends, who all happened to be kind of older than us. I knew all about the kind of things that they would get up to, but I didn't think that it was worth bringing it up with my parents because, with my luck, it would probably just backfire, so I never told anybody about the fact that she had started drinking, and, even though I couldn't prove it, I knew that she was smoking weed and stuff. I was never into any of it because, first of all, I never had friends who were cool enough to have access to alcohol and cigarettes, let alone drugs, and secondly, I was already struggling with my weight and grades. I didn't need to add alcohol and drugs to the mix. I had enough on my plate as it was. But that day, I think I must have left my room unlocked before I went for a shower, and the next thing I knew, I heard banging on the bathroom door, and my mother was screaming at me, demanding that I come out right now. I had to hurry and put on my clothes so I could check out what she was going on about. When I came out of the shower, my mother, Matt, and Jess were waiting in my room, and all of them had really serious looks on their faces. My mother brought out a bunch of empty beer bottles from under my bed, and, even more incriminating than that, there was a huge plastic baggie containing, I don't even know how many grams of weed in it. Now, I knew that it didn't belong to me, and so did Jess, but my parents didn't know that. I guess somehow she had planted it in my room when I was not there and then told my mom about it, and they started freaking out at me and screaming at me about what a horrible person I was. She didn't just scream about the alcohol and the drugs, but also started going off on me about how I was a total disappointment to them. She complained about me eating all the food. She said that I was a waste. She was sure that I was not even going to become anything worthy in the future, and that I would just continue to live with them and waste their money. I tried to tell her several times that none of it belonged to me and that I didn't even know how it ended up in my room, but she didn't buy it. She lost it when I tried to suggest that maybe Jess had placed it in my room to get me in trouble. She started screaming at me about how I was always jealous of her and that I would never be as good as her at anything, which is why I was trying to shift the blame. I was crying like crazy by that point, but even then she didn't seem to care and continued to yell at me. After some time, she stopped screaming at me and said that I had to go. I didn't know what she was talking about, and I asked her where I was going to go, so she told me that she didn't care where I went, but she just wanted me out of the house because she was done dealing with me. When I said that I wasn't going to go anywhere, she told me that she would call the cops on me, and, since I was almost 18 anyway, they were going to take the drug charges very seriously. She told me that she didn't want an addict living with her and using all her money and resources, and that I had to look out for myself now because she was done playing happy family with someone who didn't even deserve it. I kept begging her not to kick me out because even though I wanted to leave, I knew that I had nowhere to go, and I didn't have enough money of my own, but my mother simply didn't care, and she told me that if I didn't clear out within that day, then she really would call the police and she, herself, would report me to them. I was stunned that she was capable of being so heartless, and even more so that neither Matt nor Jess had any complaints about this. They were literally just going about that day as if nothing was going on. After a considerable amount of crying and begging, I actually started packing my things because, between getting arrested for possessing drugs and living on the streets, I would gladly take the latter. I was done packing by the evening, and when I left the house, nobody said goodbye to me, and I never turned around either. I went to the park and sat on the bench there for a couple of hours, but then it started getting really cold, so I decided to head over to a friend's place to spend the night there, hoping that they would allow me. I went to my best friend Amy's place and asked her if I could stay with her for a couple of days. She already knew how my parents were, and I didn't have to explain much to her. I told her the events of that day, and she was scandalized. She told me that her parents could help me if I would just let them. I had always told her never to tell anybody about the way my parents treated me, including her parents, because I didn't even know if people would believe me, and I guess I felt weird sharing these personal details of my life with others. But that day she forced me to tell everything to her parents, and they were just as horrified as Amy had been. They got on a call with my mother and tried to speak to her, but it didn't help at all, and she was quite rude to them. So they realized that talking to her wouldn't make the situation any better, and then they did something that I don't think I can ever thank them enough for. They told me that I could live with them for as long as I had to and that they would support me. They were rich enough, so money was not a problem, and Amy loved me, so she was ready to share a room with me. I spent the next couple of years living with them, attending community college, because that's the only place I got accepted due to my bad grades. I started working and saving money to find a place of my own. But Amy's parents made sure that I never felt the pressure to move out of their house and made me as comfortable as they could. Then, about 3 years ago, I had finally saved enough to move out. I was proud of myself and, at the same time, I was really grateful to Amy and her parents. I really couldn't have done it without them. Even on the day that I moved out, they were the ones who helped me settle into my new place and told me that I was welcome back anytime I wanted to visit them or even live with them. That was the turning point of my life. I had lost a lot of weight by then, and my health was much better. I felt better and I looked it as well. I was also earning enough to support myself, and I had spent enough time working hard on myself, so I decided to start dating as well because I wanted to get married eventually, and I had to start looking. I met a couple of guys before Jeff, but it always fizzled out before it could really get somewhere, and after I met Jeff, I finally understood why. It was because Jeff and I were meant to be together, and all the other guys that I met before him were just meant to be fun. But nothing more than that. When I started dating Jeff, I didn't know that he was rich and was the heir to his dad's company. I just really liked him because he was funny and cute, and he seemed to really like me too. After dating for a couple of months, he told me about his family, and I realized that they owned a chain of restaurants that he was going to inherit in a couple of years after his father retired. Now, a lot of people might think that knowing how rich he was might have changed things for me and stuff like that, but honestly, I just still saw him as the same person that I had known before. That knowledge didn't change anything for me, and I loved him just as much as I had before. We moved in together after about a year of dating, and he had introduced me to his family a couple of months before that. Everybody in his family really liked me, and we all got along well. Everything was just perfect, and so, recently when he asked me if I wanted to marry him, the answer came to me quite easily. We've been engaged for 2 months now, and things have been going super well. But then, about 2 weeks ago, I received an email from Jess. Now, we haven't spoken in almost 8 years, and I haven't heard from my family ever since I got kicked out. I didn't know why she would reach out to me now, especially to make amends. I think enough time has passed, and neither of us cares enough to even try and fix the situation anymore. So when I read that email, and realized that she was reaching out to me to apologize for everything that had happened in the past and acknowledge that she had been a total nightmare, I was really confused. She actually admitted to planting everything in my room because she wanted me to get kicked out since she just hated me for no reason. I had no idea why she would be confessing all of that so many years later, and I knew that there was something off about this whole thing. The timing was also suspicious because I had just gotten engaged, and I knew that she must have known about it because I had posted about it on social media, and we did go to the same high school, so some people must have told her about it. Everything seemed very suspicious, so I decided to do some digging. In doing so, I found out that the guy that Jess was married to happened to be the owner of the business that supplies plastic containers and stuff for takeaway orders to Jeff's restaurants. It was quite easy for me. All I had to do was make a fake profile and stalk her, and from there I went on to her husband's page and he mentioned all about his work in his bio, so that was a relatively straightforward process, and I already knew a lot about Jeff's business because we had plans to run it together once his dad retired, so I was learning the ropes already. When I noticed that this was the guy he was dealing with, I instantly told Jeff about it. Now, in the past couple of years, I've been doing my best not to think about my old life because I only wanted to move on, so I haven't followed anybody from my family online, and I have also told my friends never to tell me any news about them, so I never knew that Jess was married now, and had been for a few years. But when I found out that her husband was actually dealing with us, Jeff and I decided that we would cancel our contract. It was costing us a lot anyway, and, more importantly, I don't think I could ever have anything to do with that woman again. Not even in a business capacity. Jeff also told me that the quality of the products that he was being supplied by her husband had also decreased substantially from the beginning, and they had been considering dropping him as their supplier anyway and had been in talks with another guy with cheaper prices and better products. So last week, a couple of days after I received that email from Jess, Jeff decided to hold a meeting with her husband and cancel their contract. But for some reason, Jess believes that I did this on purpose to get her back and has been accusing me of that through her emails and social media posts. We haven't been in touch for almost a decade, but she still thinks that I'm holding a grudge against her, which I might be. But that's not the real reason that her husband lost our contract. She made a post a couple of days ago and said that a lot of clients had been dropping them anyway and this was the last straw, but she claims that I only did it out of spite and apparently this was highly unprofessional of us. She tagged our Facebook page in her post, and it's really messy now. I kind of feel bad for her because in her post she mentioned that she and her husband have been losing clients left and right and, alright, I'll admit that part of this was personal, but a lot of it was professional as well, and I don't think Jeff and his father would have dropped her husband as their supplier on just my word alone. Nevertheless, I feel kind of bad for her. Update 1. Okay, so Jeff has spoken to his dad's lawyers, and his dad thinks we did the right thing, so we are going after them legally and demanding that they take down that post and pressing charges for defamation against them because the guy was charging us a bomb and delivering products below expectations, so if we were getting a better deal somewhere else, we were obviously going to go there. It's just a coincidence that I just happened to be married to the guy who runs that business, and instead of running their company better, she decided to run her mouth on social media to try and defame us. It's ridiculous how I even allowed myself to feel bad for her after everything that she had put me through. But you guys really opened my eyes, so thank you for that. A lot of you are really supportive and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for all the comments. Update 2. So, Jeff and his father filed a defamation lawsuit against Jess and her husband a couple of days ago, and we are meeting with a court-appointed mediator in a week, maybe? But in the meantime, my mother has taken it upon herself to defend her poor little stepdaughter. Once again, it's so ridiculous. I feel like I'm back in high school. But thankfully, I'm not actually back in high school and I can simply just turn a deaf ear to them now and ignore everything that they say because, unlike then, I don't have to be in my mother's good books to have a roof over my head. So she can cry about it all she wants, but it's not going to change anything. She has been trying to get to me for the last few days, ever since Jess was served. But I have just blocked her and moved on with my life. I don't need that sort of negativity around me. I'm engaged. I'm about to get married to the man of my dreams. And the last thing that I need is her or her crazy stepdaughter back in my life again. Update 3. Hey, so let me just fill you guys in quickly. First, we were able to win the defamation lawsuit. It wasn't even that hard because my father-in-law's lawyers are total sharks. And they ended her and her husband. So yeah. Maybe they'll focus more on their business now and actually live up to their clients' expectations. They had to pay up for whatever they said, and we were able to reach a settlement. So that's over now, and we can finally focus all our energy on planning our wedding. It's really exciting, and I can't wait to be married to Jeff. As I said, he is literally my soulmate, and I waited long enough to find someone like him. Now I finally have him. I'm never letting go. Now on to the next story, story 2. My girlfriend was raped while in the process of cheating on me. I don't know what to do from here. I've been sitting here for like 15 minutes trying to figure out how to start this. My head is completely spinning. My thoughts are just all over the place. I guess I'll start with the backstory. I've been dating Sarah, not using real names, for just under 2 years now. She has a close friend, John, who she's known since she was a child. I never liked him. He was always a little creepy, blatantly flirted with Sarah for the entirety of our relationship, and made occasional passes that made me uncomfortable. So, cut to like 2 weeks back, Sarah and I were invited to a gathering/party by a mutual friend. I had a workshop for work that night so I couldn't attend, and with current circumstances, I was never inclined to go anyway. I didn't want Sarah to go either, but she was very adamant and I guess I just didn't want an argument, so I said fine. We ended up running into John later that day, and he mentioned the same party and asked us if we had been invited as well. My girlfriend told him she was going, but I wasn't, and he got this weird smile on his face and said something along the lines of, "If you're going, I guess I have to go." Just something about his smile and the way he said it really rubbed me the wrong way. Plus, I didn't want to be possessive, but the idea of the both of them together all night at a party did not sit well with me. After we got back to our apartment, I told her a bit more firmly this time that I was not comfortable with her going to the party, especially with him there. She told me I was overreacting and shut down the conversation at that. I'm sure most of you can figure out where this is going. I went to the workshop and she went to the party. It got to be like 2 a.m. and she hadn't gotten home, nor was she answering my calls. Naturally, I was incredibly worried. About an hour later, one of her friends called me, and told me Sarah was found unconscious at the party and driven to the hospital. She was raped by John. After spending 2 days, including that night, at the hospital and talking with the police, I took her home. She told me John drugged her and dragged her upstairs where it happened in one of the bedrooms. The party was at his very large house. She was an absolute mess. She didn't want to go outside. She wasn't eating and had terrible nightmares. I did everything I could to comfort her through this process. I was devastated for her and hated to see her like this. But, and I know this makes me sound like a terrible person, I don't blame her for John assaulting her. But I couldn't get the fact that I tried more than once to dissuade her from going to the party and specifically said her being with John made me uncomfortable out of my head. I felt I could have done more to protect her and she should have listened to how I felt. Important side note. It turns out John is literal living garbage. After her assault, we both felt it was best to get justice. There were drugs in her system and all the physical indications. We immediately filed a restraining order and the police opened an investigation. Within the span of a week, after news had gotten around, 2 other girls came forward with similar encounters with John. So the guy is basically a serial rapist. Cut to now, my girlfriend is still in no better shape than she was 2 weeks ago. She gets panic attacks out of nowhere. She's lost like 15 pounds and absolutely refuses to leave our apartment, even to seek therapy. I was committed to taking care of her and being there for her. But I got a call from one of my close friends, Sam, this morning. It was a long conversation, but it basically boiled down to him, as well as many others at the party that night, seeing Sarah flirting with John at the entire beginning of the party. According to him and the people he had been talking to, she was, at the very least, matching, if not being the initiator in these exchanges with John. He also recounts that she wasn't blackout drunk or seemingly that out of it. And worst of all, many saw her holding John's hand, taking John upstairs. At this point, I feel like I want to vomit. He told me he wanted the situation to cool down a bit before telling me and was going to tell me after the party what happened. But with her being taken to the hospital under the circumstances, he didn't feel it was the right time. I decided to not assume anything and asked her about the specifics of what happened that night. She tried to tell me the same thing, that she was drugged and dragged to a bedroom. But when I told her what Sam had told me, the color completely drained from her face. She started to panic, and I did my best to calm her down. But it was at least 30 minutes before she could catch her breath to speak. She was sobbing, but she was coherent enough to understand and basically confessed to cheating on me. She said she was drunk and hadn't been out for so long. She wanted some adventure. She admitted she was the one who took John to the bedroom and wasn't dragged there against her will. She kept apologizing and saying it was a terrible mistake and that nothing else was a lie. He did rape her. I believe the last part. As far as I can understand now, it was when they were in the bedroom fooling around when he slipped something into her or something like that. Then he forced himself on her. I don't know what to do anymore. She was raped, but to me, everything before that was her still intending to cheat and actively cheating on me. I am devastated and I don't even want to look at her right now. I left the apartment and am currently at Sam's house. I don't know anything anymore. She lost her job to COVID. I pay rent for the apartment where her name isn't on the lease and groceries. She's become completely emotionally dependent on me the past few weeks. If I did break up with her, she would have nowhere to go and, as much as I resent her, I don't want something terrible to happen to her. Please help, I need advice. Don't know what to do. Edit. There's been a lot of responses in a short time, so I thought it would be best to address some things here. First off, I've been made aware that 2 posts of somewhat similar situations have been posted to this sub in the past 2 weeks or so. I don't know what I could post here to prove this is true without exposing my privacy. So I'm sorry, but all I can do is give you my word. I'm just here looking for advice. I don't think this is something someone should be fantasizing for a karma farm. This completely upended my life. The second thing is people questioning Sarah's account of the events. I didn't include every detail because I'm just trying to get my thoughts out. But her story matches the other 2 women who came forward in terms of the pattern of John's behavior. The 2 other women were also initially in a consensual environment before he drugged them and assaulted them from what they've said and posted. A large part of the reason they didn't come forward was because it started as consensual and they thought that would make them not be believed. I also didn't want to get too graphic, but the nature of Sarah's assault was very violent. Not something most anybody would consent to, so that may be why he drugs them first as well. She had, and still has, traces of large bruises around her neck and other parts of her body, as well as scratches and gashes. I don't really doubt at all she was indeed assaulted. The drug found in her system was ketamine. While Sarah did enjoy partying, she never did anything harder than weed. Third, Sarah has been living abroad for school since starting college. Her parents have been made aware of the situation, but coming from a very religious background, while concerned for her well-being, aren't exactly supportive nor have put in the effort to come see her. She never had many close friends for as long as I've known her other than John. I don't know where she would go if I told her she can't stay at my apartment. Update asterisk I needed some time to sort out the situation, but I did read as many replies as I could, and I appreciate all the advice and messages, especially from those who had been put in similar situations as I. I guess I should start by clearing a few things up. First off, to everyone who thought my story had holes in it, it definitely did, and I'm sorry for that. At the time, and even now, I was missing a lot of information and was filling in holes as best I could with what I had. I also didn't want the post to get too long, so I left out information that I guess would have painted a better picture of my situation. I'll try my best to include those missing details. If you're just interested in the update, skip down a few paragraphs. So, details about John. He is part of Sarah and I's social circle and lives quite close to us. Some of the behavior from John towards Sarah that made me uncomfortable throughout the course of our relationship included constantly making comments about her body, putting his arm around her every chance he could, asking her to go with him on a trip to Europe last summer, just the two of them, poking her breasts when she's wearing tight clothing, saying things like, "I'm lucky I met her when I did or she would have been with me by now," etc. It's not any one thing, but the accumulation of everything that made me uncomfortable with her spending a lot of time with him. She never encouraged his behavior, at least when I was around, but didn't actively discourage it either, despite me openly talking to her about my boundaries. She just brushed it off as them knowing each other for so long and being comfortable with one another. A few smaller details I guess were relevant I should mention. 1. We are not in the US. COVID, while still obviously an issue in our country, our area is relatively COVID-free and everyone going to the party Sarah went to were part of our larger social circle. It was at a large condo a friend of ours was renting for the summer. It was not some open invite party with 100+ people. Still dumb, I know. There were 30-ish, maybe 40 people there. So, in hindsight, yeah, no one should have been at the party to begin with. Lastly, clearing up both Sarah and my financial situation. I am lucky enough to have my parents paying for my tuition, whatever scholarships didn't cover, so I can focus my resources on just day-to-day living costs like rent, groceries, etc. Sarah, on the other hand, was pretty much thrown to the wolves after finishing high school. Her parents, as I stated in my edit, are very religious and very controlling, so they told Sarah they were only going to pay for her schooling if she went to a local college. She refused and came to my school. She lived in residency for her first 2 years, which was covered by financial aid. I got my apartment about a year ago and, with COVID and her not wanting to go back home, we decided it would be best if she moved in with me. Her finances are basically completely tied up in tuition and student loans, so I offered to keep paying full rent despite her living with me full-time. Actual update. Oh boy, I wish I could say things have gotten more clear in the past week, but honestly it's been a total clusterfuck, and it's only gotten worse. I spent a few days at Sam's reaching out to friends, trying to get a clearer picture of what happened that night before going back to talk to Sarah. I got told the same story multiple times, that she was the one who started flirting with John and led him upstairs. I should say right now, in my first conversation with Sarah confronting her, she didn't explicitly say she had intended to sleep with him that night. She just confirmed she took him upstairs. She was basically having a panic attack throughout the entire conversation, so I had a hard time pushing for clarity. So by this point, in my heart, I was trying to find any excuse at all for her to save our relationship, but my mind was telling me that the relationship was over, at least for the time being. But, as many of you commented, despite my, obviously, grief in losing a 2-year relationship, I decided I'd be willing to let her stay in my apartment again, rent-free, to at least the end of October to sort out other living arrangements and get support. I called her about 3 days after staying at Sam's and told her I was willing to listen to her side of the story, but I needed the complete truth about everything. And she agreed. So I went back to my apartment later that evening. We sat down and I asked her about what really happened that night. She started crying right away, but not panicking, and told me she had to tell me something about herself. Sarah has always been into the partying scene more than me. I've never really been comfortable around drugs and that environment in general, but I went with her anyway about once a month or so. She, on the other hand, would have girls' nights out and parties pretty much every weekend. Right at the beginning of our relationship, I told her I'm not really comfortable being with someone who is involved with hard drug use. My brother has a history of addiction and I've seen what it can do to somebody and the people around them. She told me that's fine since she only drinks and smokes weed occasionally. Well, it turns out, for about a year now she started doing harder drugs at parties when I was not there. And her girls' nights were often just her and some from our social circle, John included, going to a friend's apartment to do shrooms. I was shocked, to say the least, and I didn't even know what to think at that moment. I just tried to ask her more about what happened on the night she was assaulted and if she intended to cheat on me that night. She comes clean and tells me she did lead John upstairs, but swears she wasn't trying to sleep with him, but wanted drugs. He told her it was cocaine, but obviously it was not, since only fentanyl and alcohol showed up in her system at the hospital. She told me he immediately started coming on to her, but she tried to fight him off, but eventually, she was too drugged out to fight back. After consoling her for a while, I asked her what her relationship with John was really like before and if they did anything together before what happened that night. She admitted that they made out a few times before, around Christmas last year, but promised it didn't go any further than that. She was begging me to forgive her and that she needed me in her life, that she just was in a rebellious phase because of her upbringing. I didn't know what to believe anymore, and still don't, to be honest. I just was completely overwhelmed by everything. So I told her I needed to clear my head and left again. Sam was nice enough to let me stay at his place again. I talked to some of my friends she said she was doing substances with and they confirmed it. I was pretty upset at them for hiding it from me, but they told me she basically forced them to keep it a secret from me. It feels like so much of my relationship was a lie. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and she lied constantly for who knows how long. At this point, my mind is basically made up. So I called her and told her it's over, but she can stay at my apartment until the end of October, but only if she finds a therapist and gets help during that time. She basically lost it during the call, but my mind was made up, so I just said I'd be staying at Sam's for a while and hung up. I wish that was the last of the shit that happened, but literally a day after that, I start getting spammed with hate messages and calls from friends, relatives, and people I don't even know. Turns out, she's posted all over social media about how I was breaking up with her because she was raped and was kicking her out with nowhere to go in these COVID times. She also wrote that I've been emotionally abusing her after her assault, victim blaming her, and stopping her from getting a therapist. I'm completely lost. I'm furious and heartbroken. I can't even describe all the emotions I felt. I called her again that night and told her she has 2 weeks to move out now and I don't want to hear from her again. I had to spend the past week playing damage control, trying to clear my name on social media, calling friends and family. I was ostracized by coworkers, though, luckily my boss was on my side. I was getting doxxed and death threats. My life basically fell apart. Sam, thank God, was completely understanding through all of this and said I could stay at his place until Sarah moved out. She's moving out on Friday, but I don't want to go back to that apartment anymore. I've had to cut out friends. My reputation is now in the garbage. I lost the first and only person I've ever loved. I don't know anymore. I low-key want to die, but I'll find a therapist sooner or later. I just feel numb to everything. I don't even know if I'm right or wrong in this situation anymore. I hope I haven't rambled on too much. I know this post is really long, but thank you really for everyone who showed support in the last post. It meant a lot. Edit. Someone's comment made me realize she was still lying to me the second time I talked to her. She changed her story about what she was drugged with and I didn't even realize. I was not told by the hospital what she had in her system and I'm not very knowledgeable on substances in general. All that information I had came from Sarah. I don't even know if she was drugged against her will at all at this point. God, I'm doubting everything now. This is not the person I thought she was. I don't even care. She's out of my life now. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My girlfriend invited her ex over to my apartment, and I'm absolutely livid right now. I live in a big city in my own apartment. My girlfriend, Lily, lives with her roommates, but if I'm being honest, she basically lives over here 80% of the time. The person writing this story doesn't state his name, so we'll just call him Mark. Early today/yesterday, while I was at the gym with my friend Mike, she texted me that she had an old friend she hadn't seen in a while that's in town and that it would be nice to have a quiet place to catch up. I said they could use my apartment and that I'd go out for dinner with Mike so they'd have time to catch up. During this time, I was at the gym, so I was in a rush. I didn't ask who she was inviting over, etc. Well, apparently I should have, as the old friend she was apparently catching up with alone in my apartment was her only ex-boyfriend, Kyle. Around 30-ish minutes after this conversation, I get a text from her saying they're at the apartment. I just said, B, and continued with my friend Mike. I finished our workout around 7 p.m. and decided we'd go to Whole Foods as their hot/salad bars have some great food. We ate there and finished around 8:30-ish. I'm on my way home now, and honestly, I wasn't expecting anything other than just saying hi and heading my ass to bed. It had been a long day, and honestly, I was just ready to get to sleep. I arrived home around 9 p.m., and at this point, I had no idea if her friend was still over or not. I was secretly hoping they weren't, as I didn't feel like socializing at all, but hey, I'll take one for the team. When I walked into the apartment, I see some big-ass Timberland boots that obviously are a man's. I'm immediately like, shit, her friend brought her boyfriend. I'm gonna have to stay up and socialize now. I take off my shoes and jacket and start heading down the mini hallway. As I enter the living area, I see my girlfriend sitting on the couch with a man at separate ends but staring right at each other talking. My girlfriend notices me and jumps a little. I didn't really find this odd at the time, but now that I'm thinking back on it, it makes sense. At this point, I'm still completely oblivious. I say, hell, and start walking toward the man. I'm looking around the house at this point for her friend. Honestly, I just thought she was in the bathroom or some expletive. I shake the guy's hand and say something like, hey, I'm Lily's boyfriend. He replied back in a cocky-ass way, I'm Kyle, Lily's ex. I was like, oh, my fault. I thought you were a friend's boyfriend. Then it got a little quiet, and I rapidly realized that my girlfriend had been alone with her ex in my apartment for the last couple of hours. I look at my girl and say, so, I'm taking this with your old friend? She said, yeah, in a soft-ass voice. At this point, I wasn't letting myself jump to any conclusions, but I'm tired, and I don't feel like socializing. I'm also now upset my girl was just chilling with her ex in my apartment. It got quiet again, and these two made zero effort to continue whatever conversation they were having just moments ago. Lily asked how my day was, and I was like, it was fine, I guess. Again, getting the vibe of interrupting something. At this point, I'm fed up. Only a minute or so had passed since my question to her, and I looked at him and asked, Kyle, hey, do you mind ending it here for today? I actually got some things I got to talk to Lily about. He said, she invited me over though, and we're still reminiscing on the good old days. I look at Lily. She can't even look me in my eyes. I look back at Kyle and say, all right, let me rephrase that. This is my apartment and I'm telling you to leave. He then looks at her and says, do you want me to leave? At this point, and I'm not proud of it, I completely lose my shit, saying, what the hell do you mean by that? I don't give a damn if she wants you to leave or not. I'm telling you to get the hell out of my house. Lily is telling me to calm down and turns and tells him he needs to leave. Kyle gets up and heads towards the hallway to get his shit. I follow and he ends up leaving. I come back, and Lily is now pissed at me, saying I embarrassed her. I embarrassed you? She then goes on about how my reaction is totally uncalled for as she told me he was coming over and asked. I was like, no, Lily, you said a friend was coming over. A friend. Not once you mentioned this friend was a male, much less your ex. She then says my reaction was inappropriate and that I acted like an ass. I tell her, you were with your ex in my apartment. Do you not understand how much of go to hell that comes across as? I then asked why the hell they were meeting in the first place, and she told me he was going through rough times and needed someone to lean on and that she just wanted to be there for him as he's a nice person and that by hanging with him in my apartment, it shows nothing shady is going on. I explain how that is stupid and a shitty thing to do and that if my ex started having issues and I was the one comforting her, she would be pissed. She was like, no, she'd understand because she has empathy. I was like, that's shitty, Lily. You got pissed at me at the gym because I smiled when a girl complimented my form when lifting. She then was like, she's done talking, and stormed out. I didn't say anything. I didn't chase. I haven't reached out. I just sat on the couch and thought about what the hell just happened. I then called my father, who gave me some great advice. She then texted me these 2 hours ago. Can we talk? I'm sorry for not telling you it was my ex that I was inviting over. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Nothing happened. Nothing is going to happen. I love you. He messaged me out of the blue. He needed someone to talk to. I didn't think that much of it. I'm sorry for deceiving being you. That sounds like BS, right? I didn't think much of it, then followed by sorry for deceiving you, like obviously, you did think about it or you would have been truthful. I wanted to talk to him at your place because I didn't want you to assume something else was going on. Please talk to me. I love you. Obviously, if she sees this, she'll know I'm talking about us, but she doesn't use Reddit. I haven't responded yet. I'm leaning towards wanting to break things up with her after talking about all this with my pops. Not for her talking to him, but for how I felt in the moment it all was happening. It's a huge red flag for me that she said, old friend, instead of ex. I still don't get it. In the moment of me getting visibly upset with her ex, she didn't take my side once. When I was nice before I even recognized him, it felt like I was the odd man out. I just felt like she doesn't respect me. Not in some 1950s where the woman has to respect the man, but if the roles were reversed and I was with my ex at her house, I would have backed my girl when she was getting mad. I would have called my ex out for talking cocky to my girl, etc. I'm still very pissed, so I don't think I should be talking to her right now. It's currently around 3 a.m. honestly. I'm just tired. I don't even know if I'm pissed. Update. I know this is long. I doubt you actually want to read it all. Sorry, I just poured my thoughts into it. It's currently around 7 p.m. when writing this, and honestly, the last 13-ish hours I've been up, I've been draining, to say the least. I awoke in the morning to my phone going absolutely nuts with notifications from Reddit. I'm honestly like, oh shit. Why the actual hell did I decide to pour my personal thoughts out into a Reddit post? I began to scroll through y'all's comments, and to say I was shocked is an absolute understatement. Literally, almost all of y'all are actively taking my side. And I mean, I was just scrolling this morning just looking for that one comment that was taking hers. It did not come. What surprised me the most was the amount of women in this thread who said they would never do this to their man and that it is beyond disrespectful. I mean, those comments hit the hardest this morning as those were my thoughts exactly. Last night was a shitstorm for me, to be honest. I couldn't believe what the hell had just happened. As you all can guess from my post, I live alone, so there wasn't anyone at my crib that I could talk to. So I decided to call the one man who's had my back since day one, my pops. As many have messaged me and many have commented, I will go into detail on what exactly our phone call entailed. First, I'm going to go back to when it originally happened so that it makes more sense. Also, when reading back my thoughts from last night, it was clear I was rushing at the end and honestly just fed up with everything at that point, so I skipped a lot of details. Okay, to start, Lily had just stormed out of my apartment at this point when I called her out that she wouldn't be okay with me meeting with my ex because they needed someone to lean on. Like I said before, I didn't call, text, or follow her. At this point, I'm furious, and I can't believe what the hell just happened. I take a seat on the couch and try breathing exercises. I am trying to calm down, but it's no use because I keep remembering Kyle asking me, "Do you want me to leave?" to my girlfriend. I didn't really elaborate on this beforehand, but that pissed me off to another world, and I was absolutely about to lose my shit to the max. I just kept telling myself, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. At this point, all I want to do is beat Kyle's ass, and all my methods for calming down were failing. At this point, I just said, to hell with it, and picked up my phone and said, "Siri, call old man." I honestly didn't know what I was going to say at this point, but I knew if there was one person who could get through to me, it would be my pops. Now, I don't remember the exact dialogue that exactly went down, but I'm going to try my best to be as accurate as possible. Phone dialing. Dad picks up and says, "I've seen it already. You dropped 43 on the..." I started laughing a bit and said, "It's not about that, Dad. I just got into a huge fight with Lily, and Dad, I'm really pissed, Dad. I don't want to do anything stupid." Dad, whoa. Okay, where are you right now? Are you with her? Are you guys okay? Me, Dad, I'm at the crib right now, and she just stormed out. Yes, I am chilling. I just don't know what to do. There's a long pause after this, and I hear my pops take a deep breath and say, all right, hit me." I began to give him the same rundown I gave you guys in my last post. The whole time, my pops is dead silent, doesn't say a word. I finished up the story. All he asked was, "What does Kyle look like?" I won't lie, this caught me off guard because I was like, damn, Dad, why the hell does it matter what he looks like? I responded, I don't know, he was white, with long curly hair, etc. Dad, why? How tall was he? At this point, I'm like, WTF, Dad? Me, I don't know, he was like 5 feet 9 inches max. My dad laughs a bit and says, explains the Timberlands, they are the male equivalent of heels. I didn't realize it yesterday, but what my pop was doing was what he always does. I literally can't stay pissed if I laugh, and my dad can make me laugh on demand. I started laughing. I was like, you're right. He then was like, how much you think he weighed? I had to think for a minute, but I was like, him? Maybe $150-ish. My pops then brought up the argument between Kyle and me. Dad, you said Lily told Kyle to leave after you started to get mad, right? Me, yeah, I responded. My dad pauses for a long time again and takes another deep breath. Dad, Mark, I wouldn't be surprised if this situation is a lot deeper than it seems. It speaks volumes to me she only rallied for him to leave after you began to get real upset. Mark, you are 6 feet 0 inches and 190 pounds, and were just disrespected in your own house by a man you do not know. When a woman cares for someone, the last thing she wants is for him to be in harm's way. She understood exactly what was going to happen if the situation continued to escalate, and she chose to get out of harm's way, followed by switching all the blame to you and leaving. Honestly, son, where do you think she's at right now? I didn't say anything. I knew what he was implying. Dad, I know it hurts, but promise me you won't do anything irrational. She made her decision. There's not much you can do to change it. You've proven your whole life you're one of one. Don't lose yourself now over something that will just end up a tiny bump on your roadmap. I mean, seriously, I couldn't be more proud of you, son. You're 22, living on your own, you got your shit together, that's rare, Mark. You're rare, Mark. The right women, like your mom for me. I laughed a little. Walk into your life when you least expect it. Don't waste your energy. Everything happens for a reason, son. I paused for a minute and said, thank you. I needed this, Dad. My dad laughed. Of course, your mom and I are here for you always. Now, call sister's name. Fast forward back to this morning. I couldn't sleep last night, so this morning was just completely ass. Lily was blowing up my phone the whole night, apologizing and begging for my forgiveness. It's around 11 a.m. at this point. I'm completely just over this situation. I still haven't responded to her since she stormed off last night. In my opinion, she made her choice. However, I have a long week ahead of me and can't be having this shit continue to impact me this much going forward. I eat something and head down to my apartment's local gym to just run. On lifting days, I go to a private gym, and on cardio days, I use the apartment's gym. Running is therapeutic for me. Around 1 o'clock, I got a phone call, and you guessed it, it was from Lily. No part of me wanted to pick up the phone, but we've been dating for 2.5 years. I felt obligated. Picks up the phone. What's up? I say, to be immediately met with crying. Lily, I'm sorry, Mark. I love you to death. Please just talk to me. I shouldn't have left last night. Panicked. You know I love you, Mark. I didn't say anything. Lily, Mark, please talk to me. This isn't right. Please, just talk to your girlfriend.
I'm sorry.
I told you nothing happened. I won't ever talk to him again. Please, I beg. Can we just talk? At this point, the realization of my feelings for her started to really kick in. Instead of anger, sorrow, or any emotion, TBH, I just felt a sense of indifference when she spoke. Me, can you come over around 3? Lily, still crying at this point. Yes, 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 she says. Me, okay, I say. Ends call. I'm just sitting on the sofa now at this time, just waiting for 3 to roll around, scrolling through the comments on my previous post. Knock, knock. I hear from the hallway shortly after. I see my girlfriend emerge from the mini hallway. She begins to start smiling and crying while wiping her tears again. I take notice of how I feel at this moment. A sense of indifference, a feeling like I don't care anymore. It really started to hit me. 2.5 years wasted just like that. The woman who I cared so deeply for just 24 hours before is now in front of me crying. And I don't feel a thing. Lily, it's over between us, I said. Completely shocked, she barely manages to mutter out, "What?" while still crying. "It's over," I repeated. Lily, Mark, no, please.
I'm sorry.
Don't end this between us. I love you to death, she said hysterically. Now, I won't lie, that last bit hit hard. I mean, heart, man. I couldn't mask it anymore. The lid had been broken. Don't end this between us, I say. Lily, I'm sorry, Mark. I love you.
I'm sorry.
You can call me whatever you want. But at this point, I just went soft. I didn't have the heart to keep drilling her anymore. She was just breaking down, crying uncontrollably. I just sat down in silence. Lily, Mark, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Mark, I love you. Only you. I won't ever talk to him again. I promise, Mark. Please just give me one more chance, said Lily. I'm completely silent. I mean, there was just a huge pressure on my chest. It felt like my rib cage was going to crack under the pressure. I sat there silently listening to her crying. I remembered one of my favorite songs. I'd rather have loyalty than love. 'Cause love really doesn't mean jack. See, love is just a feeling. You can love somebody and still stab them in their back. It doesn't take much to love. You can love somebody just by being attached. See, loyalty is action. You can love or hate me and still have my back. 21 Savage. I just kept repeating those lyrics in my head over and over and over again. To many, it might seem she said all the right things, but to me, actions speak louder than words. Last night, she chose to make her decision on us through her actions, and since actions speak louder than words, it really didn't matter what she said. I'm struggling to keep it together at this point. I really did love her. Should I still? But I understood this was what was best for me. I wouldn't have been able to trust her again. You can't be in a relationship without trust or loyalty. I lost both from her. As she cries, I look up and say, Lily, please, it's over. There's no saving this. She looks at me and says, Mark, no, please, just stop. It's over, Lily. I interrupt. Please, just do us both a favor and take your things and leave. Lily, it's over. Please, let's just end it here. She doesn't say anything and gets up and starts grabbing some of her things around the apartment. I grabbed a garbage bag and helped her pack. She left the keys to my apartment on the table and left. This all finished up around 4:30 today. I've just been sitting here trying to process what the hell just happened. Honestly, it all still doesn't feel real. I never intended on posting on Reddit yesterday, but I just needed a place to vent. And since it blew up, I felt like I should update y'all today. It's 7:35 as I finish writing this. I'm exhausted by the weight of what just went down over the last 24 hours. Doesn't feel real to anyone. Who actually read this long-ass update? Thank you to those who commented on my previous post. Thank you. I placed a vent last night. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thought about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.